If you like our video, click the button to subscribe to our channel and get easy access to new content. To see our full suite of ad-free video courses, instruction manuals, and quick reference guides, visit us at www.teachucomp.com. To create an invoice in QuickBooks Online, either click the Create Invoice link under the Action column for the Customers row in the Customers page, or click the plus New button in the navigation bar, and then click the Invoice link under the Customers heading in the drop-down menu that appears. In the Invoice window that then opens, enter the information needed to invoice the customer. The left pane in the Invoice window shows a beta preview of the autofill feature, which lets you use AI to try to fill in an invoice. To close this pane, click the X button in its upper right corner. The right pane in the Invoice window contains easily accessible invoice settings. To show or hide the pane at the right side of the Invoice window, click the Manage button in the toolbar at the top of the invoice. The toolbar at the top of the Invoice window contains an Edit, Email View, Payer View, and PDF View tab at its left side. The Edit tab, which lets you edit the content of the invoice, is selected by default when you create a new invoice. After you create an invoice, you can then click the other tabs to see how the invoice appears to your customers. To see how the email for the customer invoice appears, click the Email View tab. To see how the web page where customers can learn how to pay the invoice appears, click the Payer View tab. To see how the PDF copy of the invoice appears to customers, click the PDF View tab. To edit the content of an invoice, select the Edit tab if needed. To choose a customer, select one from the Customer drop-down towards the upper left corner of the window. If selecting an existing customer's record, their information then populates other fields in the form based on what you entered when you created the customer's record. Alternatively, to add a new customer, select the Add New choice from this drop-down menu, enter the new customer's information in the customer pane that then opens at the right side of the window, and click the Save button in the pane. A customer email field appears by the customer drop-down in the invoice and shows the customer's email address if you entered it when creating the customer's record. If you didn't enter it when you created the customer, type their email here. To email copies of this invoice to others, click the CC/BCC link by the customer email field to show additional CC and BCC fields in a drop-down menu. Then enter the email addresses into these fields as needed and click the Save button. To mark the invoice as an invoice to print or email later, click the Manage button in the toolbar at the top of the invoice to show the pane at the right side of the window if needed. Then click the Scheduling section in this pane to expand it and show its settings if needed. To mark the invoice to print later, click the Print Later toggle switch under the More Options section to toggle it to the On position. To mark the invoice to email later, click the Send Later toggle switch under the More Options section to toggle it to the On position. These options let you batch print or batch email these invoices later from the All Sales page, filtered by delivery method if desired. The invoice's payment options appear below the line items area. To edit the invoice's payment options, click the Edit link next to the payment options to then show the enabled options in the Payment Options section of the pane at the right side of the window. Then click the toggle switches for the payment methods to allow for this invoice on or off in the pane as desired. The Bill To field in the invoice shows the customer's address. You can enter or change the billing address for the invoice here. If you enabled shipping, the invoice shows the Ship To, Ship From hidden, Ship Via, shipping date, and tracking number fields, and adds a Buy Shipping label link to the toolbar at the bottom of the window. The Ship To field shows the customer's default shipping address if you entered it for the selected customer's record. If using automatic sales tax calculations, the invoice's sales taxes are calculated based on this address. If empty, QuickBooks Online uses the Ship From Hidden field's value or the default company address instead. You can change the Ship From Hidden field's address if needed. The Invoice Number field shows the next highest available invoice number. If you enabled custom transaction numbers in sales forms, then you can change the invoice number if needed. To change the customer's terms for this invoice if needed, select a choice from the Terms drop-down in this section of the invoice. The Invoice Date field shows the current date by default. To change the invoice date, click this field and select a date from the calendar drop-down that appears. The Due Date field is calculated from the selected Terms and Invoice Date fields. However, you can also click into this field to select a date if needed. To edit the customer's record if desired, click the Edit Customer link that appears here to open the customer's record in a customer pane at the right side of the window, where you can then make your changes and click the Save button to save them. If you enabled custom fields for invoices in QuickBooks Online, then enter any custom field data into the custom fields that then appear in the following section of the invoice if needed. If you enabled class tracking on a transaction level, then a class dropdown appears here. If you enabled location tracking, then a location dropdown also appears here. The next area in the invoice is the line items area, where you enter field data into the columns for the products and/or services to invoice. You add each product or service as a line item within its own row. To select the service date of services provided, if you enabled service dates in sales forms, use the service date field. To select an existing item from the products and services list, click into the product service field and then select the item from the drop-down menu. If you enabled SKUs, then the selected item's SKU appears in the SKU field. The selected item's description appears in the description field, and you can also type a description here if desired. If you enabled quantity and rate fields in the sales settings, then type the quantity of the product bought or service provided into the quantity field labeled QTY. The rate for the selected item per quantity unit appears in the rate field, and you can change it if needed. QuickBooks Online multiplies the quantity field by the rate field and shows the line item's total amount in the amount field. Alternatively, if you select a product or service without a rate or quantity, or didn't enable those fields, then enter the total amount into the amount field if needed. If you enabled classes and assign them by 1 to each row in transaction forms, then select a class from the class dropdown. If the product or service is taxable, ensure the tax field checkbox for the line item is checked. You can check or uncheck this to mark the line item as taxable or non-taxable as needed. After entering the first line item, continue adding line items until you enter all the line items needed for the invoice. At the left end of each line item row is a selection handle. To change the order of the line items in the invoice, click and drag the line item up or down by this handle and then release it. To delete a line item, click the triple dot button at its right end and then select the Delete command. To add a new line item row, click into the bottom line item row to automatically add a new row. Alternatively, to add a new blank line item, click the Add Product or Service button below the line items area. To add a subtotal line item to an invoice in QuickBooks Online, select the line item row above the row where you want to insert the subtotal row. Then click the drop-down part of the button below the line items area and select the Add Subtotal command to add a subtotal line below the currently selected line. You can add as many subtotal lines as the invoice requires. To enter a message to show on the invoice, type it into the Note to Customer field. To enter a message that appears for this invoice in the customer's statement, type it into the Memo on Statement Hidden field. To type internal notes about the customer that don't appear for the customer, type them into the Internal Customer Notes Hidden field. In the lower left corner of the invoice is the Attachments field, which lets you attach a file to the invoice. You can drag and drop files onto the field or click the field to open a file upload dialog box that you can use to browse for and then select the file to attach. Note the 20 megabyte file attachment size limit. In the lower right corner of the invoice is the subtotal, taxable subtotal, sales tax, discount, shipping and tax on shipping, total, deposit, and balance due field information, depending on which sales form features you enabled. The Select Tax Rate dropdown lets you select either the default automatic sales tax calculation or a custom sales tax rate if you created any. Based on your selection, QuickBooks Online then shows the sales tax to collect. If using the automatic sales tax calculation, then you can click the See the Math link by the sales tax amount to see the sales tax information and calculations and correct it if needed in the pane that then appears at the right side of the window. We'll discuss this pane in detail in a later lesson in this chapter. For now, note that if you need to override the automatic sales tax calculation, you can click the Override This Amount link in the pane's lower right corner to show a new section at the bottom of the pane. Then click the Edit link in this section. Then enter either a new rate or amount to charge for sales tax and select a reason for override from the dropdown. Then click the adjacent Apply Override button to confirm the override. After editing the sales tax if needed, you can then close the pane by clicking the Close button in its lower right corner. To apply a discount to the invoice, if you enabled a discount field in your sales forms, click the % or dollar toggle switch to set either a percentage or dollar amount type of discount, respectively. Then enter the discount percentage or amount into the adjacent field. If needed, to change whether to apply the discount before or after calculating sales tax in QuickBooks Online, click the arrow buttons to the left of the sales tax rate and discount fields to switch the order of the two fields in the invoice each time you click it. Doing this changes whether the discount is applied before or after calculating sales tax based on the order the fields appear in the invoice. If shipping is enabled, then enter the amount of shipping into the shipping field. Any sales tax on shipping appears to the left of this field after you enter a shipping value. The Invoice Total field shows the invoice total amount. To record an amount paid as a deposit at the time of invoicing, if you enabled the deposit field in your settings, enter the amount into the Deposit field and click outside of the field to set its value. Then record the deposit payment details, including the amount, payment method, optional, reference number, optional, and the Deposit To account in the deposit pane that then appears at the right side of the window. To return to the main pane after entering the deposit details, click the Back button in the pane's upper left corner. The Balance Due field that then appears after receiving a deposit in the invoice shows the remaining balance due, less the deposit. If needed, to cancel creating an invoice before saving it, click the X button in its upper right corner, and then click the Leave Without Saving button in the prompt that appears to close it without saving. To instead create a recurring invoice, click the Manage button in the toolbar at the top of the window if needed to show a pane at the right side of the window. Then click the Scheduling link in the pane to expand that section if needed. Then click the Make Invoice Recurring toggle switch to enable it and show a pane where you can set the recurring invoice template schedule and save the template. If needed, to change the invoice template, click the Manage button in the toolbar at the top of the window if needed to show a pane at the right side of the window. Then click the Design section to expand it if needed. Then select the desired template to apply. Creating custom form templates is discussed in a separate lesson. The toolbar at the bottom of the invoice contains links for the actions you can perform. Different actions appear when creating a new invoice versus opening an existing invoice. The middle of the toolbar contains a print or download link. To save and then print or download the invoice or its packing slip, click the Print or Download link and then select the desired command from the pop-up menu that appears. To save the invoice and open a printable PDF of the invoice in a new browser tab, click the Print command. Then use the toolbar buttons at the top of the PDF preview of the invoice in the new browser tab to print or save the invoice. Then close the new browser tab when finished. Alternatively, to save and directly download a PDF copy of the invoice to your computer, select the Download command. Alternatively, to save the invoice and open a printable PDF of the invoice's packing slip in a new browser tab, select the Print Packing Slip command. Then use the toolbar buttons at the top of the PDF preview of the packing slip in the new browser tab to print or save it. Then close the new browser tab when finished. To only save the invoice, click the Save button towards the right end of the toolbar at the bottom of the invoice. Alternatively, to save the invoice and then either open a new invoice window or close the invoice window, click the drop-down arrow on the Save button, and then select either the Save and New or Save and Close command, respectively. To save and then send the invoice by text or email, click the Review and Send button at the right end of the toolbar. Alternatively, to save the invoice and send a link to the online invoice by email to the customer's email address, click the drop-down on the green button at the right end of the toolbar, and then select the Share Link command. The link also appears in a window on screen, so you can then copy the link to send to them via other channels if desired. You can then close the link window. To open an invoice for editing after saving and closing the invoice window, click it within the Invoices page to show information about it in a pane at the right side of the window. To reopen the invoice for editing in the invoice window, click the Edit Invoice button at the bottom of the pane. Alternatively, to select an invoice action from a full menu of possible invoice actions, click the More Actions button in this pane, and then select the desired action, like Receive Payment, Delete, Print Packing Slip, or Void, among others. Also, if you reopen the invoice for editing, you can then click the More Actions button in the center of the toolbar at the bottom of the window to show a similar menu of possible action choices for the selected invoice if needed. However, to receive payment on the invoice from this window, click the Receive Payment button that then appears in the toolbar at the top of the window instead. Remember to click the subscribe button to see more of our videos. See our full suite of courses, instruction manuals, and quick reference guides at www.teachucomp.com.